In a remote monastery, a monk chose a path no ordinary mind could endure. He abandoned meals, one by one, counting each day as a victory over flesh. Fellow monks watched, horrified and mesmerized, as his body shrank, skin tightening over brittle bones, fingers curled like dried twigs. His eyes remained open, staring into some unseen eternity. Weeks turned into months, months into years. He whispered blessings, barely a breath, yet his calm was unnerving. Visitors claimed he barely ate, drinking only herbal teas, chewing roots, and slowly shrinking into a figure of pure discipline. Some say his heart slowed to a ghostly pulse, but his mind seemed untouched, sharp, almost otherworldly. He sat cross-legged, unmoving, a silent witness to his own decay, as if time itself had forgotten him. Every inch of his body surrendered to hunger, and still he did not die. The monastery records tell of his final days, when he ceased all sustenance, sealing his fate. Yet when they opened the chamber, they found him seated, lifeless, preserved, as if embalmed by devotion alone. Could a human will truly conquer the body? Or did something unnatural intervene in his final silence? The story of self-mummifying monks begins centuries ago, hidden in the remote mountains of Japan, in monasteries where silence and discipline ruled every hour. Among them, this monk's journey became legend. It started simply, a vow to detach from all worldly needs, to master the body and spirit. At first, the monks laughed gently, whispering that hunger would break him, that flesh always wins. Yet day after day, they saw him reject even the smallest morsel, his meals replaced by bitter tea brewed from roots and bark, carefully measured and sparing. Years passed, his flesh shrank, limbs twisted, joints cracked like brittle wood, but his gaze never faltered. Visitors came from distant lands to witness this living relic. They described a man whose skin clung to bones, whose eyes seemed hollow yet deeply knowing. Some monks claimed to hear him whisper prayers that seemed to pierce the air itself, each word a sharp echo of devotion and madness intertwined. The rituals he followed were precise, passed down from ancient scrolls. He would chew the bark of certain trees, believed to expel all moisture from the body, and inhale the smoke of purifying herbs. His diet was designed not just to starve the flesh, but to remove fat, slow decay, and dry the organs while keeping the skeletal structure intact. Every action, every bite, every sip was a calculated step toward death, and yet a life preserved in extreme dedication. Those around him began to fear him, yet they respected the discipline. No one dared speak against his path. Some monks documented it in secret, noting the unyielding patience, the calm serenity that seemed almost inhuman. "He is no longer among us," one whispered, "yet he does not die. He has transcended hunger itself." Decades crept forward. His body became a frail sculpture of willpower, the skin a parchment stretched over rigid bones. The monastery walls held his silence, a testament to human obsession and belief. When the final fast began, the monks performed rites to ensure the chamber would become a sacred tomb. They watched as he seated himself cross-legged, closed his eyes, and accepted what everyone else feared, the slow, deliberate cessation of life. And then he stopped moving, or so they thought. When the chamber doors were opened months later, the sight froze the blood of all who entered. There he sat, perfectly preserved, a living mummy, still with a presence that felt unbroken. The body was shriveled, dry, yet the eyes, though empty, seemed to radiate a strange awareness. Was this simply the triumph of discipline, or had something supernatural preserved him? A spirit unwilling to leave the world of the living? Monastic records hint at whispers of secrets lost to time, of prayers that bend reality itself, and of monks who achieved a quiet immortality through suffering that no living human could endure. Even today, scholars debate the mystery. How much of this was faith? How much pure science of fasting and preservation? And how much an incomprehensible force beyond the human mind? The devotion of silence, of endless patience, pushed the body to its limits. But the question lingers. What truly animates a living mummy? A soul frozen in its own flesh, staring into eternity without blinking. The monk's journey had become a living legend by the time he entered the final decades of his fast. It was not merely hunger that drove him. It was a deliberate, obsessive pursuit of transcendence, a trial of body and mind against time itself. Within the monastery walls, the air grew heavy with the weight of observation. Monks whispered of his rituals, noting the painstaking details recorded in faded scrolls. How he chewed the roots of certain trees, how he brewed bitter teas that drew moisture from his body, how he applied herbal paste that hardened his skin and expelled fat, layer by layer, until the flesh became tight, almost impervious to decay. Visitors who came to witness the miracle, or the horror, described a figure unlike any human. His fingers curled like dried vines, his cheekbones sharpened to rigid peaks, his lips pulled back to reveal a skeletal grin even in life. Yet his gaze remained startlingly lucid. There was a spark of consciousness in those eyes, an awareness that unsettled all who dared look too long. Some claimed that they could feel his presence long after leaving the chamber, as if the very air had been imprinted with the intensity of his will. For decades, the monk maintained a terrifying discipline. He avoided all indulgence. No meat, no sweets, no excess. Every action was calculated. Monks documented that he would move with ghostly precision, stretching his limbs, performing silent prayers that lasted hours, hours that stretched into days. His body wasted, yet he never faltered. When his skeletal frame could barely support him, he would sit cross-legged, unmoving, whispering blessings to those who feared him. His own flesh had become a tool for meditation and an instrument of preservation. Scholars of the modern era have studied these accounts, trying to parse fact from legend. They note that certain natural preservatives, resins, tree bark, and herbs, could have contributed to his extraordinary preservation, but no chemistry or biology fully explains what happened in that monastery chamber. Over decades of relentless fasting, when the monks seemed to slip the bonds of decay entirely, fellow monks reported strange occurrences: doors that closed without wind, whispers in empty halls, shadows moving across walls though no one was present. Some claim the monk's spirit lingered within his mummified form, a consciousness unwilling to leave the vessel of flesh he had disciplined so completely. There are accounts of other monks attempting similar feats. Few succeeded, most perished partway, their bodies nothing but skeletal remains that crumbled quickly after death. Only those who combined the exact combination of fasting, herbal consumption, and ritual discipline could hope to achieve self-mummification. And even then, survival was never guaranteed. The monk who became the living mummy had not only endured hunger, but had navigated a perilous psychological landscape. Obsession, isolation, and meditation stretched his mind to extremes. He achieved a state where pain was no longer pain, hunger no longer hunger, death no longer a threat, and time itself seemed to slow around him. When the final fast began, it was ritualistic and precise. The monk stopped drinking even the bitter teas that had sustained him for decades. He sat cross-legged, hands resting lightly on his knees, eyes staring into some inner eternity. Fellow monks performed rites, chanting prayers that seemed to bend space and time around him, ensuring the chamber would become a tomb worthy of a saint, or perhaps something else entirely. Months later, when the doors were opened, the shock was beyond description. There he sat, dry, shriveled, yet somehow alive in presence. His eyes, though lifeless in appearance, seemed to carry a spectral awareness. Scholars and monks alike debated for decades. Was it merely an extraordinary feat of human will and chemical preservation? Or had the monk, through decades of fasting, ritual, and discipline, reached a form of immortality? Had he become a vessel not just of flesh, but of consciousness itself, trapped forever between life and death, human and divine? The tale of the living mummy endures, a dark testament to devotion and obsession. It whispers a question that chills the bones. How far can the human mind command the body before it commands something beyond? What price does immortality demand? And what does it leave behind for those who dare to witness it? The monk's transformation into a living mummy was not a sudden event. It was the culmination of decades, a ritualistic process as precise as it was horrifying. Each day, he consumed only the barest essentials: herbal teas, bark, and roots, all carefully chosen to desiccate the body while sustaining the mind. The herbs were not just food, they were alchemy, drawing out moisture, hardening tissue, slowing decay. Monks meticulously recorded every detail, from the way he folded his hands to the exact duration of his meditation sessions. Every movement was deliberate, every breath calculated. Even the slightest deviation could have meant failure, collapse, or premature death. Witnesses wrote of his skeletal fingers curling like dried branches, knuckles cracking audibly in silence, his eyes sunken yet alert. His face became a mask of devotion and inevitability, lips thin as parchment, skin like aged leather stretched tight over the bones beneath. Yet his gaze remained sharp, scanning the monastery halls, absorbing every sound, every whisper. The other monks moved around him cautiously, simultaneously reverent and fearful, aware that this was no ordinary man. He had begun to defy the natural laws, bending flesh to will, hunger to discipline, and time to a sort of suspended eternity. The ritual was both physical and spiritual. He chanted prayers that seemed to vibrate the very air, every syllable part of an intricate equation meant to preserve not only the body, but the essence of the soul within. He engaged in meditative postures for hours, sometimes days, never shifting, his skeletal frame holding position as muscles and ligaments weakened. Some monks later admitted they feared watching him too closely, for in those silent eyes they sensed a presence beyond human comprehension. One scribe wrote that even in death the monk had not left them. His awareness lingered like a shadow of pure will. Nutrition was meticulously restricted, progressing through stages designed to eliminate fat, dry out organs, and halt decay. Chewing the bark of certain trees, inhaling herbal smoke to purge fluids, consuming small quantities of bitter teas, all designed to convert living flesh into a preserved vessel. Monks observed that at first the body resisted, fighting against starvation, but over years the body yielded to the mind's relentless command. Hunger became an ally, pain became a teacher. Each day was a step toward a goal that few could fully comprehend. Months blurred into years. The monk became smaller, lighter, his voice reduced to whispers, then silence. Yet the rituals continued, undisturbed, measured in breaths and heartbeats. The chamber where he meditated became hallowed, a sanctuary of obsession. Those who entered felt the weight of his presence even before seeing him. It was said that shadows bent toward him, that candles flickered oddly in his vicinity, that even the air seemed to hum with his concentrated devotion. When the final stage arrived, the monk ceased all intake. He sat cross-legged, eyes closed, hands folded. His body, already a fragile lattice of skin and bone, now faced its ultimate trial. Fellow monks performed sacred rites, ensuring the chamber would remain untouched, a tomb for a saint, or perhaps for something else. Days passed. The world outside continued, unaware of the miracle within. When the chamber was finally opened, the sight stunned all who entered. The monk remained seated, preserved in a near-perfect state. The skin was dry, taut, the body skeletal yet fully formed. The eyes, though seemingly lifeless, radiated a strange vitality, as if consciousness lingered in defiance of decay. Scholars would later describe it as a paradox, a human being perfectly mummified, yet somehow alive in presence, a bridge between mortality and eternity. What had been achieved was not mere preservation. It was an attempt to transcend death itself, a conquest of flesh through willpower, ritual, and obsession. The monastery records hinted at secrets lost to time, formulas, chants, and meditations that may have touched forces beyond comprehension. Other monks who attempted similar feats rarely survived the process. Few even approached the precision required. Only one had succeeded fully, leaving behind a body that was more relic than man, more monument than mortal. The living mummy became both legend and warning. He embodied the terrifying intersection of human ambition, spiritual devotion, and the uncanny. Those who witnessed him, even centuries later through stories and records, felt a haunting question linger in the mind. Was this a triumph of discipline, or had something unnatural intervened, preserving the will when the body should have surrendered? Had he reached the edge of human possibility, or had he stepped beyond it, into a realm where flesh and spirit are no longer bound by ordinary laws? The monk's self-mummification was not without consequence. While he achieved what few could even imagine, the process left an indelible mark on those around him. Fellow monks lived in constant tension, torn between awe and fear. They observed the transformation, noting each detail with a mixture of reverence and dread. His skeletal hands, curled like withered branches, became symbols of unwavering discipline. His eyes, hollow yet alert, seemed to pierce through the walls of the monastery, reading the thoughts of anyone who dared approach. The chamber where he meditated became a shrine and a warning, a place where devotion and obsession converged. Some monks began to question their own paths. Could human will alone conquer the flesh? Or was this a perilous flirtation with forces beyond comprehension? Night after night, they whispered in shadowed halls, recounting the subtle changes, the way his skin hardened like aged leather, the faint hum in the air around him, the sense that something more than human lingered within his mummified form. Scholars later theorized that the rituals, chants, and meticulous diet had created a chemical preservation, but the living awareness in his presence defied logic. Attempts to replicate his achievement ended in tragedy. Those who tried the same fasting techniques often died, bodies collapsing into decay before the spirit could be fully disciplined. The delicate balance of nutrition, herbal purges, and ritual was impossible to perfect without decades of knowledge and precision. Yet for the monk who succeeded, every sacrifice had been intentional, every ounce of pain purposeful. Hunger was no longer a torment, it was a tool. Suffering became a medium through which he molded the flesh into a vessel capable of preserving life beyond natural limits. Visitors who witnessed him later described an almost supernatural calm. Though the flesh was withered, there was no horror in his presence, only the unnerving clarity of a mind that had conquered instinct, fear, in mortality itself. Every aspect of his being radiated a discipline so complete that it bordered on the unnatural. Even centuries later, the stories of this living mummy inspired both fascination and terror. It was a cautionary tale and a testament to what devotion could achieve when pushed to its extreme. Monks recorded the final stages meticulously: the slow cessation of drinking and food, the unbroken hours of meditation, the prayers repeated with obsessive precision. When the chamber was finally opened, observers were confronted with the unimaginable: a figure seated cross-legged, dry, skeletal, yet imbued with a presence that seemed to linger beyond death. Eyes, though seemingly empty, carried the weight of consciousness, an awareness that refused to fade. It was a convergence of science, ritual, and the human will. The monk had become a monument to self-discipline, a relic of devotion, and perhaps a bridge between life and death. His body, though shrunken and desiccated, radiated an eerie vitality, a silent assertion that mortality could be challenged. Those who witnessed it were left with questions they could not answer. Was this the pinnacle of human achievement, or an unnatural defiance of the natural order? Could any soul endure such extremes without being consumed by them? Even now, the monk's mummified figure sits in the monastery, a chilling reminder of what obsession, discipline, and faith can achieve. The whispers of visitors linger. Some claim to hear faint prayers, faint vibrations of presence, as though the monk had not truly left the world, as though his devotion had bound him to the flesh forever, refusing to surrender to decay or time. Even centuries after his self-mummification, the monk's presence remained tangible within the monastery. Pilgrims and scholars who visited the chamber reported a weight in the air, a silent pressure that seemed to press against their very thoughts. The figure, though skeletal and desiccated, exuded an aura of discipline and awareness that defied logic. His eyes, hollow yet piercing, seemed to follow every movement. Monks whispered that even in death he listened, observed, judged. The chamber had become more than a tomb. It was a witness to obsession, a shrine to the extremities of human will. The rituals he had performed, meticulously maintained over decades, had created a paradox. His body was lifeless, yet the aura suggested something lingered, an imprint of consciousness, a residual energy of devotion that refused to fade. Every inch of his mummified form was the product of precision: herbs that preserved, fasting that sculpted, prayers that echoed in invisible corridors of time. Scholars debated whether this was purely chemical, purely spiritual, or a terrifying combination of both. Some claim that even modern preservation methods could not recreate the exact state he had achieved. Visitors reported inexplicable sensations. Some felt whispers brushing against their ears, though no one spoke. Others experienced sudden chills, shadows moving unnaturally across walls, or a faint vibration beneath the floor. Pilgrims often left shaken, claiming that the monk's gaze seemed to penetrate beyond the physical, reaching into the depths of their minds. Was it imagination, suggestion, or had the monk transcended the natural laws entirely? Monastic records hint at knowledge lost to time, formulas for ritual, chants designed to anchor consciousness to the flesh, secrets of a discipline that bordered on alchemy. The living mummy became a measure of human obsession. Those who had witnessed him, or read the detailed accounts, were often haunted. Scholars noted that few could maintain focus on normal life after experiencing the chamber. The monk's extreme devotion left a residue, a reminder that human will, when pushed to the utmost, could bend the very boundaries of existence. His self-imposed isolation, decades of fasting, and obsessive ritual had achieved something terrifying. A body that should have long decayed, yet remained, in a presence that seemed alive, defying death. Monks continued to meditate nearby, feeling the silent vigilance of a master who had transcended mortality. They spoke of lessons in stillness, warnings etched into silence, that even in lifeless form, the monk commanded respect, awe, and fear. Even modern scientists, equipped with knowledge and technology, were left unsettled. How could the combination of fasting, herbal remedies, and ritual produce not only preservation, but also the lingering sensation of awareness? Could consciousness, once fully disciplined and anchored through devotion, imprint itself upon the physical form indefinitely? The monk's figure, seated cross-legged, bones dry, skin taut, was not simply a relic. It was a bridge between what was human and what was beyond. The story continues to ripple through time, drawing the curious, the devout, and the daring. Many leave transformed, carrying an unease that grows as they recall the chamber's oppressive silence and the skeletal figure's immutable presence. The monk's devotion, obsession, and discipline echo across generations, challenging all who hear his story. How far can the human mind command the body and at what cost? Could anyone truly replicate such a feat without losing themselves entirely? The monk's chamber stands untouched centuries later, a silent testament to a devotion that defies life and death alike. Pilgrims kneel, scholars whisper, yet all leave with the same chilling thought. He is still present, though motionless, though desiccated. The skin tight over brittle bones, the skeletal hands folded in prayer, the hollow eyes staring into eternity. These are not mere remnants of a man. They are the embodiment of a will that refused to surrender, a consciousness anchored forever to a vessel of flesh. Those who have lingered too long report subtle disturbances. A shadow shifts where no one stands. A cold weight presses against the chest. Faint whispers curl through empty halls. It is as though the monk watches, assesses, measures the devotion of those who dare intrude into his solitude. Monks speak quietly among themselves. He is not dead, and he may never truly leave. The rituals, the decades of fasting, the painstaking herbal purges, these were not merely for preservation of flesh. They were an act of suspension, a binding of spirit to form, a refusal to release the self even when life demanded it. Modern science can analyze the chemicals, the processes, the conditions. Scholars can estimate the decay and understand the fasting techniques. Yet none can explain the lingering presence, the eerie awareness that radiates from that mummified figure. The monk's devotion had created a paradox. He is lifeless, yet undeniably alive in some other dimension, a silent witness to generations. Even the air seems charged around him, vibrating with the memory of his disciplined will. Stories persist of monks who dream of him, of visitors who sense eyes following them down corridors, of whispered words felt but never heard. It is as if the monk continues to participate in the world through absence, an echo of human obsession that refuses to be contained by mortality. The living mummy has become more than legend. He is a question, a warning, a shadow that stretches across time, and so the question endures, haunting all who learn his tale. If human will can bind itself so completely to flesh, to ritual, to obsession, then what else might endure? What other consciousness might linger, unseen, unheard, yet undeniably present? The monk, frozen in silence, seated cross-legged, eyes hollow but aware, reminds us that devotion can surpass death, obsession can conquer time, and a single human soul, disciplined beyond comprehension, can defy the natural order entirely. In the dim monastery halls, his presence lingers, eternally still, eternally watching, and perhaps waiting for the next seeker who dares to tread the path where hunger meets immortality, where flesh and spirit intertwine, and where the living may become the eternal.